Экспертная группа «Европейский диалог» продолжает серию интервью, посвященных Брекзиту и тому, как он может сказаться на взаимоотношениях Европы и России. Сегодня у нас в гостях известный аналитик, сотрудник Чэтэм Хауса, а до этого аналитик, оценивавший риски в бизнес-компаниях, Мэтью Булек, который интересен нам в первую очередь тем, что он француз, живет в Лондоне, наблюдает Брекзит с этой стороны, а занимается постсоветским пространством. Thank you so much, Matthew, for coming and for agreeing to give us interview.
Pleasure.
My first question will be not that much connected with Brexit. How do you see relationship between Europe from one side and Russia from other side now after all these initiatives of President Macron and what's going on in general?
The only caveat I would introduce is that I honestly do not see any sort of European policy towards Russia apart from the policy of sanctions and unity, it seems, around sanctions. When it comes to European Union, I would argue that there are that many policies from that many European states, which gives a sort of dissonance and a sort of differentiated approach to Russia and to Russian foreign policy in general. Some states would be more accommodationists to Russian interests. Some states would be hardliners, like the UK, for instance, on how to push back against Russia in general. France seems to be sitting on the fence right in the middle, and according to President Macron's further initiative concerning the sort of business as usual or coming back to Russia, he seems to have gone in a way, or the government in France seems to have gone from a sort of hard line, pushing back against Russia and being tough on sanctions, to a sort of more accommodationist policy to try to bring back Russia to the table of negotiations. This, of course, comes to the price of dealing with Ukraine in the first place, and taking back the place of Ukraine between an ally of the West to a sort of cumbersome actor or cumbersome player that France seems not to know what to do of in the coming months and years.
How would you see relationship between Russia and the West and EU, NATO, and separate countries in, say, a year from now? Do you think what is going on now will somehow influence, in a short while, our relationship?
A year from now, I think one of the main questions we will have is keeping unity on sanctions, which will probably come to the table. A few weak signals are already coming in that direction, that there will be a moment, maybe in 2020, maybe in 2021, but at least in the coming future, in a very short term, there could be some sort of discussions or renegotiations of the place of sanctions in the European Union. Sanctions on Donbass, of course, I'm not talking about the sanctions on Crimea, but at least the sense of unity around sanctions on Donbass, especially if the agreements designed after the latest Normandy format summit do take place, and Russia is slowly reintroduced as a sort of good player in the room who has abided by the rules of the Minsk agreements. There could be discussions or a case in point in a way that since Russia is actually upholding its sort of commitment to peace in Ukraine, there could be the case to be made in Europe and further maybe pushed by France and other countries that sanctions could be lifted, or at least in a way drawn back from where they are now. So this is where I think we could be in a year, in let's say in the coming 18 to 24 months, with these discussions around sanctions mostly. Otherwise, I don't think that the relationship in general between Europe and France and Europe and Russia, will change very much.
Now, when the Conservative Party, after elections, got majority at the Parliament, prospects for Brexit look much more realistic. Do you think what will go on here in London and what will go on between Britain and European Union can and will somehow influence Russia's relationship with European Union in general and separate countries in particular?
If Brexit happens, or the sort of Brexit that happens. Well, we'll see when it happens. The thing is, you know, ever since Brexit has been put on the table as a sort of foreign policy and internal policy for the UK, things have changed so much, and it has been such a roller coaster of different emotions and different feelings concerning Brexit or not, that I honestly do not know what will happen, when it will happen. I think for now both extremes are off the table, whether it is a sort of hard Brexit or no-deal Brexit, even though the developments that happened just as early as today show quite the contrary. So it changes like the weather, almost every day. When it comes to Russia policy, I think one of the invariables of this policy is that the UK might stay united on the logic of being tough, necessarily tough, maybe reluctantly tough on Russia, but necessarily tough and strong when it comes to pushing back against Russia's encroachment and Russia's attempts to destabilize the European Union and other countries. The question is, how much will the UK's voice will be heard and respected in a post-Brexit environment, according to what the UK will do in Europe thereafter, and what the state of the relationship, especially in foreign policy, will be between London on the one hand and then Brussels on the other, and all the member states thereafter. So there are so many unknowns right now that I think if you take it back to the smallest common denominator is, will Brexit happen in the first place? I'm still in denial for that. And what kind of Brexit will happen in the end? Russia will of course influence in Russian policy, or policy around Russia in a way, will influence the way that UK's government will react and act with Europe or without Europe. But I think it's still such a small element in the basket of problems that the UK has to deal with on a daily basis that it is not the biggest element, to say the least.
If to think that both sides, I mean the West and Russia, are interested in improving their relationship, what do you think each of those sides can do in order to go forward and in order to improve relationships, speaking about the West in general, the European Union in particular, or even certain countries?
So if you take it back on the other side with Russia, I think there might be the case that it might not be in the government's interest in Russia and the Kremlin to actually start negotiations or to start having a better relationship with the West in the first place. This is one common mistake, I think, in analysis in the West, that Russia actually wants to engage and actually wants better relations with the West. The case could be argued that they like this sort of relationship, they like the antagonism, they like the pressure that it brings because it gives Russia standing, it gives Russia posture in a way that is unprecedented. If the Kremlin really wants to engage, and in a way the new commitments regarding Ukraine might be a sign that there could be a sort of agreement to move forward in a positive and elevated way, the case could be made that building contacts between people in Ukraine could be a way to move towards peace in Donbass. Therefore, if you apply it to the larger question, maybe building contacts with people between Russia and European countries, small steps, not major political steps, but small human-based steps could be a way forward if there is commitment, of course, on both sides. So it takes time to heal, takes time to move forward, but if we start at the basis, at the level of humans, then maybe there's a chance for not the least a better understanding, but at least a shared understanding of things.
Matthew, you are closely watching and analyzing Russian to the West relationship for almost, or even for more than a decade. Let's play this imagination exercise. Could you please tell us what or how these relations will look like in 10 years from now?
Without discussing 2024 and Putin's potential successions. So I think it all depends on what will happen in 2024, if anything happens during the potential elections, and the discussions around will Putin stay in power, will he step down, will they be a sort of, the different scenarios you can think about already right now about the succession or not. I think it all depends on, if it's too easy to say the ball is in Russia's camp. because the ball is always in Russia's camp in a way. But if it really is, then it's a question of what will happen politically and a willingness of a potential new generation of politicians, if they ever come to power within 10 years, to actually want genuinely different and new relations with the West. On our side, in 10 years, whatever the form of the European Union or NATO unity will look like, I think that there will have to be a sort of willingness as well to welcome Russia back inside European security architecture, maybe a post-Cold War security architecture, in as much as it is possible. One of the variables that is to be closely watched is the place of China in this ecosystem. Not as much the place of America, because God knows where they will be in 10 years, especially if they go after a second Trump mandate. But the place of China, I think, and the choice of different European countries and even the US in this sort of competition cooperation with China will by and large define the way that European and Russian relations are thought in the first place, with potential schisms, rifts, antagonisms that could be exploited by China and that could be amplified to make sure that there's a sort of new divide and conquer relationship between this sort of trilateral relationship between Russia, China and global West.
Okay, let's switch now from Matthew the analyst to Matthew French citizen who lives in London. What are your expectations and what are you afraid of, speaking about Brexit and what will follow?
So if Brexit happens, for me, it'll be harder to import wine from my origin country, which is a big problem. No, more seriously, I think one of the greatest threats for me from you know, I've grown up with Europe. I voted for the first time when I was 18 for European elections. So it's always been dear to me. The European dream has always been in my heart, and I've always followed, you know, the logic of Europe, and I've always lived in the European Union. And for me, this is the first stepping stone of the destruction of this European ideal. So if we start, of course, it's not the destruction of the European dream as such. It's still very much alive, but we still need to believe in it and to enact it. The problem today is that we don't enact this European dream anymore. We don't live by it. We start destroying it. We start poking holes in it, one step at a time, with the rise of populism, with Brexit, with these waves of antagonistic politics and negative politics that try to completely overtake and swallow this European ideal that my former generation, the former generations of Europeans built. So for me, Brexit is really the sort of either the first stepping stone of this destruction or the blow too much that will bring the shattering down of Europe, which I hope will never happen, of course. But this is one of the risks that I see. Apart from that, for everyday life, especially in London, the bubble of London, I don't think the impact will be that tremendous. So rest assured that all the Brexit survival kits that they are selling apparently everywhere online will be used for nothing. So hopefully so.
Thank you so much, Matthew, and let's hope for better.
Thank you very much.